Okay, so here's another short video showing how to use third-party software instruments, that is, instruments that don't come with Logic, but that can be added on later, whether they were free instruments or they were paid-for instruments, either way. So here we have, again, the same thing. If I'm going to create a new track and I want it to be a software instrument track, if I have details, I want that to be open so that I can choose the instrument. Now, you may have noticed previously that I do see my list of all the instruments that come with Logic, and I also do see the list of third-party things under AU instruments or audio unit instruments listed as well. So if I know exactly what I want, sure, I could choose it from here. Otherwise, I can make sure empty channel strip is on, not default patch, because that's going to again open up an electric piano sound, but I say if empty channel strip and open library. Especially for third-party ones, unless you manually assigned it, you're not going to be able to use the library anyway for third-party stuff because none of those presets show up in that list. So let's create this instrument. There we go. And of course, just like before, if my inspector is open, I go to my track, I go down to the channel strip, and I click on instrument, this time bypassing all the stuff that comes with Logic, going down to AU instruments. And I would then go, the next little branching out of the menu shows the actual names of the company that you might have installed on your computer. Now, if you have Logic at home, but you've never downloaded, purchased, or free third-party stuff, then you wouldn't see anything here except this Apple one, which are kind of some audio units that come with the actual computer, not necessarily related to Logic. But all the rest, as you can see, I have quite a bit of stuff on my home computer, but we do have things like Audio Damage, Native Instruments, Reason Studios, Yuhi, Waves. We've got lots of stuff in our computer lab as well at the school. So for example, if I want to bring up something, say by Audio Damage, whoops, I'm going to go Audio Damage Inc. There's two different categories here. One's an older plugins, this one's is newer, and maybe I want to look at the Quanta synthesizer. So I click on that. I don't necessarily have to go all the way out to stereo. If you have some that have both mono and stereo, or like this multi-output, if you just click on the name of the instrument, it's going to open the stereo one anyway. So you don't necessarily have to branch out one more time. You can just click on that name and it comes up. So here's a third-party instrument. Now, not that Logic instruments all look the same, they don't, but they all kind of generally work the same. That is, if you click up here in this menu that usually would say something like a default, you would find presets. Notice on this third-party instrument though, when you go to presets, there's nothing there. That's because this manufacturer didn't choose to use the same preset menu that Logic uses, and in fact most won't, and that's because they make plugins to use in lots of different DAWs, so they have their own little system. So sometimes you kind of have to click around, or maybe read a manual if you have that, but you can click around to find the preset list. And this particular one, you might notice it says preset default. If I click on that, well, now I can see maybe some menu options as factory. Oh, okay, then it has, this particular one has it by both sound designers' names, where you can see sound or presets or patches created by those sound designers, or also some categories. So if I want some soundscape type of stuff, and now it shows me that, and I can click one and it loads it up, and I can of course try it. Well, I don't have sound on this one. I can try those out and just keep on moving them around until I get what I like, and then maybe I would go to a different type of screen. In this case, I click back on there to get to that. Every third-party company's design is a little bit different, as you'll see. So even within the same company, if I go to a different one by Audio Damage, you'll notice that, let's see, let's go to Continua. These two were made around the same time, so they're a little bit similar. But so you can see the menu is very similar for this particular two instruments because they were created around the same time. If I choose another one by that same company, such as maybe Phosphor 3. Let's see if this one's a little bit different. This is the same. They redid, it didn't used to be, but they redid the newest version. It also is very uniform in how you find things. Go to a different company though, totally different story. Let's go to Native Instruments. I'm going to bring up something like the Absynth synthesizer. Some of these take a moment, and there we go. Depending on how old it is, you may or may not be able to resize it. I can't resize this, although sometimes you'll find there's other ways to resize things than grabbing a corner. So you just never know. This particular synthesizer, you can see I've got a browser selected, so I've got various ways to whittle down to something that I'm searching for. But then I can also have different panes to jump into different aspects of this synthesizer. Go to yet another one. Let's go to one by Yuhi, say the Zebra 2. Again, takes usually a moment. So here we have a totally different looking synthesizer, totally different way to browse presets. We've got a lot more different choices here. Again, how they name things can be different. In this case, this particular synthesizer, if it starts with HS, that's named after the sound designer who created that preset. In this case, Howard Scar, who created these things. So you can click on it, then try out that sound, and once you're done, you would go back then to either the performance view or the synthesis view, depending on how you actually manufacture, or sorry, how you actually change the sound. Now, notice that if I click on some of these things like, oh, well, how do I resize this thing? It doesn't seem to do it this way. Well, you sometimes have to click around like, okay, that's definitely not what I want. Let's see. Maybe if I right click on something, hey, look, I just, fortunately I knew to do that, to right click, and I've got different sizes that I can make this. Some of them even have skins that you can change. Like, oh, I want to have this type of view, a very different look than say this Dark 8. So just different ways that you can view that. None of Logic's built-in instruments have a way that you can change the interface, the look of it. They're all the same. But some of these third-party companies do allow you to have some of those changes. And one more. Let's go to let's go to Reason. So this is an interesting one. The Reason Rack. Reason is actually a DAW by itself, but they've now made all their instruments available as a regular plugin. The only difference is the Reason instrument itself has an interface that kind of tries to be a metaphor like the real world, where you're putting instruments in a rack. So it comes with this rack, and then you have to choose, just double click, you choose a synthesizer. I can flip it around to see how it's wired, all this stuff that I can do. But what's cool about this plugin that's very different than most, let's see, I can't resize that way, but I wonder if I can here. So again, some different settings on different types of instruments. But the cool thing about this is that because it's a built-in rack, I can actually add, as you see, lots of more devices. I can even add multiple instruments. So if I say wanted also this one in here. So now I've got two synthesizers built in. And if I play a note, it's actually playing both synthesizers. I can also add in Reason effects, all this stuff, all within this one little rack. So that's kind of unique. Most plugins are just individual instruments. So very cool to add these things on. Of course, it can get very expensive if you're buying a lot of third-party things, but there are lots of great free things that you can add, both instruments and effects. Plus, obviously, lots of stuff that you can buy out there. It's a huge industry. So there you go, there's that one. The next one then, of these demos on this module, have to do with adding in effects.